Why I believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. First things first, when looking into the scholarly census as to whether Apostle Paul was an actual historical figure, it says, yes, there is an overwhelming scholarly consensus that Apostle Paul was a historical figure who lived in the first century, while a small number of fringe critics have historically questioned his existence. This is not accepted by mainstream academic. Even atheist New Testament scholar Dr. Bart Ehrman says this about Apostle Paul's New Testament literature.
Paul tells us a number of important things about the historical Jesus based on what he knew. Of these 13 letters that the Apostle Paul wrote, 7 of them are letters that he actually wrote.
And amongst those 7 letters, most scholars agree that Apostle Paul actually wrote was the book of Galatians, where Paul tells us this in chapter 1 verse 13. For you have heard of my former life in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it. Even the book of Acts chapter 8 verse 1 tells us that when Paul was known as Saul, he approved the execution of Stephen, a young Christian man. From persecuting the church of God, Paul then suddenly makes a miraculous conversion and becomes part of the very same people group he had once persecuted, after claiming to have encountered the risen Jesus on the road to Damascus. Shortly after Paul's conversion, he tells us this in the book of Galatians chapter 1 verses 18 and 19. Then after 3 years I went up to Jerusalem to visit Cephas, which is Peter, and remained with him for 15 days. But I saw none of the other apostles except James, the Lord's brother. Paul tells us he is a contemporary eyewitness to Peter and James, and these 3 men, Peter, James, and Paul, all claimed to have seen the risen Jesus. And amongst these indisputed letters from Paul, according to scholars, 1 and 2 Corinthians is also listed. So let's go through 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 3 through 8. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the 3rd day in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, Peter, then to the 12, then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, the brother of Jesus, then to all the apostles. Last of all, as of one untimely born, he appeared also to me. And these men held to this claim to the very end, as we're told by the early church writer Clement of Rome in his first letter to the Corinthian church chapter 5, that both Paul and Peter were martyred for their faith. And 1st century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus tells us how James, the brother of Jesus, was executed by Ananus II, who was the brother-in-law to Caiaphas, the high priest that executed Jesus. These men did not die for something they claimed to have heard, but rather something they claimed to have seen, because he is risen.